All right, so you know how Nigerian politics can get really, really heated? Well, we're diving right into the heart of one of those debates today.
Buckle up.
Yeah. We're going to be looking at this YouTube video where Dele Farotimi is responding to some pretty strong statements from Kenneth Okonkwo. And, you know, this is about Peter Obi's role in the Labour Party. But it's way bigger than just some internal party drama, right?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. It really digs into these anxieties about Nigerian elections, how the country is actually run, and of course the different visions people have for its future.
So we have to start with the spark that lit this whole thing. Kenneth Okonkwo basically said, and this is from the YouTube host reporting on it, that he's done speaking for Peter Obi.
Big statement.
Yeah, and the core issue seems to be that he doesn't think Obi is being tough enough, decisive enough when dealing with stuff going on inside the Labour Party. What did Dele Farotimi have to say about that right off the bat?
Well, he was pretty clear. He's like, look, I'm not even in the Labour Party, never have been. So he calls this whole thing the noise next door, basically saying it's Okonkwo's problem to deal with, you know, as a party member.
Drawing a line in the sand there. But even though he's not a Labour Party guy, he doesn't hold back on how he feels about Peter Obi himself, which I found interesting.
Yeah, that's crucial. Farotimi straight up says he admires Obi. He thinks Obi could really steer Nigeria in a better direction, peacefully too. And you can tell that respect really shapes how he sees the whole political scene.
And you know, Okonkwo is saying Obi isn't handling the Labour Party stuff right. Farotimi kind of pushes back on that, like he has a different idea of what's appropriate for Obi to be doing.
Exactly. He's saying, look, a political party, ideally, they should thrash out their issues democratically, right? He doesn't think Obi, who's relatively new to the Labour Party anyway, should be calling all the shots or trying to force things.
Okay, so let's talk about the 2023 election, because Farotimi has some strong opinions about how that went down. He is totally convinced Peter Obi actually won.
100%. This is like bedrock for him. He just flat out says it. Peter Obi won. And then he gets into the judiciary, saying they basically worked their magic, and not in a good way. Clearly, this belief about the 2023 election is a huge factor in how he sees things now and going forward.
And that leads directly into his stance on the 2027 election coming up. He basically lays down a hard line.
Yeah.
No participation unless something major changes.
Yeah, he's firm on that.
Yeah.
No way he's getting involved, and he's probably speaking for a lot of people here, unless the whole electoral system gets a serious overhaul.
Yeah.
He particularly zeroes in on this BVAS thing, the bimodal voter accreditation system. That has to be mandatory, he says, and results need to be transmitted electronically right from the polling stations. This is something you see in a lot of democracies, this worry about making sure election results are verifiable, transparent, especially where maybe people don't totally trust the old paper-based systems. It's all about balancing security, accessibility, and yeah, sometimes the interference in places like River State, they pop up every election cycle in Nigeria. So an appointment like this is going to get a lot of scrutiny.
So basically he has zero faith in the system as it stands to run a credible election.
Pretty much. He goes so far as to say the results of the 2027 election, they might already be decided before a single vote's cast. You know, given this appointment and the lack of any serious electoral and judicial reforms, that's a really damning statement about how he sees things.
Yeah, and he doesn't stop at the election process either. He starts talking about bigger problems with governance, expressing real worry about the country as a whole.
Right. He says this really striking thing. Nigeria is not yet born. And he considers himself a victim of Nigeria. You can hear the disillusionment there, right? And he's not just criticizing political parties anymore. He's talking about deep-rooted systemic problems that he sees in the country.
And to make his point, he gives some pretty specific examples of what he's talking about.
Oh yeah, he names names, he talks about the insecurity, the killings happening in Anambra. Then there's corruption, he alleges, and he brings up this road contract, supposedly worth a mind-blowing 4 billion naira per kilometer, and he says it didn't even go through proper channels. On top of that, he's worried about how public assets are being privatized, saying it's all very shady and unaccountable.
It's like he sees this huge gap between what the government says they're doing to fix things and what he thinks they're actually doing.
That's at the heart of his argument. He uses this sarcastic tone to compare what the government claims they're doing with stuff like them buying private jets and yachts. And the NNPC, the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, that whole privatization thing. He's basically saying, come on, this government isn't working for the people, not really.
Now, we gotta talk about his reaction to the courts upholding the 2023 election results. He did not take that well.
Oh, he was furious. He totally rejects the judiciary's decision. And he brings up this report from the ICPC, that's the Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offenses Commission in Nigeria. It was about alleged bribes paid to lawyers and judges, like between 2018 and 2020. Then he mentions this statement, and it's important to say it's an attributed statement, but it claims judges are getting super rich off these electoral tribunals. Now, I know it's just an attributed statement, but for Farotimi, this all adds up to a judiciary that's corrupt, that was basically part of what he calls the rape of democracy in 2023. And think about it. The ICPC is Nigeria's top anti-corruption body. If they're reporting possible bribery in the courts, that's going to raise some serious eyebrows about whether the legal system is even working.
And to get his point across about the election, he uses this analogy. It's actually a pretty common saying.
Yeah, he brings up that thing about how you can fool some of the people some of the time, but you can't fool all of the people all of the time. So he's applying that to this situation. He's saying even if the people who rigged the election, even if they didn't know better or were just following orders, the Nigerian people, the people whose votes were supposedly stolen, they should be able to see that they were tricked. He's absolutely convinced the public knows the election was illegitimate.
So after all this criticism, does he offer any hope for the future, any ideas about how to move forward?
He really stresses this idea of collective responsibility for Nigerians. Like, everybody needs to own up to their part in how things are. He sees these problems as infecting everything, even religious institutions, and he doesn't hold back in his language there.
So it's not just about blaming the politicians or specific institutions.
Nope. He's saying real change only happens when people want it, all together, and when there's good leadership to guide it. He's skeptical that any one person, even someone powerful like a new Chief Justice, can fix everything without that shared desire for something better. He ends by talking about how this madness, as he calls it, the current state of affairs, it's become normal just because people have accepted it. So to get onto a different path, there needs to be a big collective push.
Okay, so let's sum it up. Dele Farotimi is really laying into the current state of Nigerian politics. He firmly believes Peter Obi was robbed in 2023. He's deeply suspicious about future elections being fair without some serious changes. And he's super worried about these deep-rooted issues with governance and corruption. He sees the judiciary as a bad actor in the 2023 election and calls for Nigerians to wake up, take responsibility if they want a better future.
What hits hard is this tension he brings up. On one hand, you have this hope for a better Nigeria, and he sees that potential in Peter Obi. But on the other hand, there's this huge lack of trust in the whole political system, in the way elections are run. He's painting a picture of a country struggling with problems that go way beyond any single politician or party.
Which brings us to something for you all to think about. Farotimi makes this powerful call for collective responsibility. So what would that actually look like? What concrete steps could people take? What kind of mindset shift is needed to bring about real change in any society facing these kinds of complex issues? And I'm talking bigger than just voting or the usual political stuff. What are the values, the ways people participate in society that could actually make a difference?
Yeah, what does it really take to move the needle? That's the question.
That's the question. Thanks for tuning in to this deep dive, and we'll see you next time.
See you then.